This is Mindustry Eviction gameplay. I've got matches here between the two best players on the server, Zanzibarzy and Tree, and we are going to get a direct look into what they're doing that makes them so fast, and the mistakes that they make, and what their weaknesses are, so maybe if you end up in the server with them, you can beat them. Or give them a shot, something like that. So, starting out with Zanzibarzy's open, he's got a 2 silicon smelters set up. That's what I use. Tree, opposite corner of the map, he is setting up 3 smelters, and he's got 3 mono factories and his first dagger factory, and he's going to set that all up automatically. This setup is going to bottom out the copper and lead sooner, so he's going to be stuck manually mining and taking down parts of the spawn base earlier. Yeah, and he's going for titanium first, and this is eventually going to be graphite, but graphite presses are extra copper and lead heavy, so that's going to take him a bit of time to set up. Back at Zanzibarzy's base, he's got a self-contained single dagger factory going, 2 mono factories, 1 graphite press to start out with. He's got the early thorium that you need and a steam gen. So this is a pretty balanced opening. He's going to make up for adding a bit more graphite, and he's using his waters as one should do, since that is a very good way to conserve your graphite in the early game. He's also got his daggers out to take his first expansion. He sent 2, usually you send 3, and we're going to see a big difference in the time it takes to actually break down that fallen core with just 2 units doing it. The regen is really going to make it take a lot longer. He's going to build his diff gens before his glass. Back to Tree. Tree is using his bit of water on the Thor. He's got a bit overbuilt on graphite. He's going with a very early plast. This is one of the things that he likes to do. You just leave that sitting there. It's pretty cheap as far as power and setup wise, and that'll give you enough to do some earlier overdrives. Now he's setting up his next piece of power, and this is going to power the first significant size silicon. So he's going for 6 smelter setup, and you want to feed water into that first air blast drill. But it looks like he's running out of something, and it's probably glass. It looks like he's forgotten to put up glass, so that's going to hold him back a bit. And he's spotted his mistake, and he's going for 2 kilns. If you do it earlier, you can usually get away with just 1, but he's got sort of a backlog that he needs to fill in quickly, so that's a reason to go for 2. And while he's working on this, he is building up whatever resource is missing, and he's continuing to micromanage daggers to do his expansion. So that completes the first real silicon smelter at 5 minutes. That's a good time for that. You'd like to do it in 4, and it's possible to do it in 4, but from that point, he's going to larger power plants, diff gens. Okay, returning to Zanzibarzy, he is doing his own smelter setups. He has 12 placed on this hex in a very labor-intensive arrangement. This takes a lot of attention to feed all these belts all the way around here. That's not how I would do it, but if this is what fits, then this is what he's doing. He's also got Air Blast on Titan. 2 glass smelters. He's added the second dagger factory to expand better. And 6 minutes, he's set up the mass production of polys. That being critical to actually having reasonable amounts of build speed. That poly factory uses a lot of graphite, especially relative to the 3 presses that he's got so far. So he's got some banked up, but he's got to put that directly into these multi-presses so that he can get the income to balance out what those poly factories are going to be using. Okay. And now we're at 7 minutes. He's got his polys coming out. First one will be there in seconds, and he is doing his platinum setup. Also a pretty basic one. You always want to use the oil if you can for this instead of an extractor. It builds a lot faster, it uses less power. This is one of Zanzibarzy's early game habits, is he sticks with 2 diff gen setups for a pretty long time instead of expanding to the 4, 5, 6, the larger ones. And this is another place where he'll put more attention into something and get sort of a finer granularity of output. It does end up being a bit more efficient because he's not using water extractors, he's pulling from pumps. But he's not quite being careful enough. He's forgotten to put titanium into the cryo factory there. So it's probably gonna take a power problem probably for him to actually notice that and go back and fix it. He's also got a buildup of daggers out to take the next bit of space, and it looks like he thinks he needs some more graphite. All right, here Tree has got he's got 2 more 6 chems smelt set up. He's going more for the low-tech graphite sources. They're cheaper to build and they use less power, although they're less effective. But if you've got lots of coal to spare, then usually it's a win. He's got his polys pumping out, and he's got unit factories. These low-tech mass production daggers and crawlers and that sort of thing, that is for leaving on attack and taking space. He's also got his rushed dome, but he rushed it so fast that he doesn't have any platinum ready to put into it. You want to put in at least a little bit of phase early enough so that you actually have something to fuel it as soon as it's done. Tree tends to go with 2 surge smelters real early to build up to that expensive dome cost. Russian domes, they're all for getting those domes as soon as possible. Yeah, and now he's moving up to larger size power plants. That looks like a 5 diff schem, 2 built-in drills, and then you also feed Titan to it, and you're getting 4,000 or 5,000 power. You put the overdrive in it, you get a bit more. Although he's probably skipping out on the overdrives because he's going to dome that hex and plenty of other ones too. Yeah, there's the dome. Domes are great. They cover lots of space and they give you a lot of production for not much more attention because you already put the attention into building the factory. back to Zanzibarzy's base. He's still building some 2-diff generators, a little bit at a time. He's got a big glass factory going, and his first big power plant is using steam from this oil patch. So water extractors, oil patch, and centrifuges. I am not sure off the top of my head how much power that makes, but it's probably in the thousands, 3,000, 4,000. So that's a good chunk. This is something that you can do if you've got a very large amount of graph production, since a lot of the components of a power plant that's using oil to steam power is going to use a lot of graph. And seeing as the next thing he chose to drop after putting that down is even more graph production, he probably ran himself pretty low. All right. Now he's adding some more thorium production, and it looks like he's out of thorium. Didn't drop these air blasts soon enough, and that'll crop up when you go to build surge smelters. Yeah, one laser drill of thorium isn't going to keep up with this stage of economic development. And now he's going to start dropping mass production unit schems to do what Tree started doing a few minutes ago. And when next time the map comes up, you're going to see a big difference in the amount of space that Tree has taken with these daggers for no attention versus Zanzibarzy's late start in doing the same thing. More domes have appeared since the last time we were here. All right. He's putting up crucibles, 4 crucible schematic, and that needs a plas conveyor to get to the core. And we're gonna see that Tree forgot to build more platinum production. He still just got that one little bit of oil pump patch in his opening hex, and that's not enough to build 4 crucibles, overdrive, and these belts. So he hits that, and he immediately drops a larger production platinum factory and then gets back to work on it. But that slows him down a little bit. He's got a 5 Thor power plant. Yeah. And there's that one tiny little belt of platinum versus what he had to build. And he's still not finished with it. What's he doing instead? Scroll down. All right, yeah. So he probably sees that he's got enough surplus to drop down a Zenith factory. And that's going to make a big difference in this game, since those are going to head straight for the nearest power plant, and they're really going to augment anybody that starts making contact at the frontiers of his expansion. All right, 4 crucibles are done. That's something like 40, 50 silicon per second once he gets the dome up on it. Zanzi's got his domes up. He's neglecting to take out the overdrive inside his things. That's a little bit of a waste of power and some resources you could reclaim. It probably doesn't make a huge difference. He's very dome obsessive. He should probably be working on something else. My criticism of doming everything is it doesn't make nearly as much sense to put it on your first, second, third hex where you've got lower efficiency schematics that you needed for the early game ramp. Like, you want to focus those on your big silicon factories, your big power plants, and not so much on your one glass kiln and your one laser drill of thorium and things like that. Okay, now he knows he needs ground units. He needs to take space faster, and he starts dropping these crawler factories. Yeah, that's extractor to oil to coal to silicon. So those are pretty power inefficient. but you just need a sand patch to drop it as long as you have the surplus power. And more titanium in range of the drill, or in range of the domes. Now, Tree is already 3-4 hexes out from his borders, and Zanzibarzy still has fallen cores immediately adjacent to economy hexes. So he's pushing out a lot slower, and now those zeniths are going to be headed for his stuff. Yeah. Tree's added a bunch more ground things, and he's sort of working his way south. In this kind of progression, you'll just slowly build your way out towards where you're going to start building forts and defenses and actually conducting unit operations. That's jammed. That's oh well. You don't want to do a lot of time flying back and forth between the front lines, setting up defenses or unit attacks, and then back to where your economy is. You want to conserve that time where flying around is just dead time. Okay, now we're making contact. Zeniths are shooting at Zanzibarzy cores. He's got one fort up that will be able to handle that stream of zeniths, but that bay generator is not going to draw away crawlers or daggers, and they are going to hit one of his bigger power plants and take that out, and that's going to be trouble. He really needs defense capable of handling crawlers and dagger streams down at this point, and instead of doing that, he's going to drop zenith factories right on the border. And while this is going on, Tree's setting up a perimeter. So Zanzibarzy is locked in at this point. His unit production is not going to be enough to overwhelm 2 surge cyclones in a fort. So yeah, all that stuff's just going to shred there. And he's not going to end up with good, well-designed defenses on these 2 hexes. So it would take some scrappiness to come back at this point. Off-core defenses, manually placing things. He's got to stop leaving attack on. If he's making zeniths, they need to not fly immediately into that fort. And now Tree is building some command centers, and he's going to start actively managing his army. And at that point, he'll just go around any defenses that Zanz does build, and we're done. Zanzibarzy knows it too. That's the result of the die command, and we're gonna fast forward through the mop-up phase of this. On to round 2. All right, Zanzibarzy's got a mid-right spawn, and Tree is on the top right, so they are much closer than they were in the previous game. Although not quite to fistfight range of 1 or 2 hexes. Zanzibarzy's starting in a similar manner. This is a tough spawn hex. There is no water available. We go up and see how Tree is starting out. 3 silicon smelters. That's going to turn into graphite. He's doing graphite before the titanium this game. And he's sticking with the 2 mono factories for now. And he's already out of copper and lead, and that's before the first mono even finishes building. He could be setting up blueprints that we can't see with lingering attention here, but I don't know if he's doing that. What kind of factory? Yeah, so that's probably dagger and mono factory right there. Yeah, it looks like. And he'll feed a little bit of lead into those. But yeah, bottoming it out on copper and lead is having a lot of that stuff sit half built for longer than you'd want it to. All right, down here, Zanzi's got his first dagger factory, Titan, 1 glass, and the silicon. He is stuck with combustion generators instead of being able to do the steam like you'd want to. In a case like this, you probably want to make sure your daggers are very front-loaded so that you can take neighboring hexes faster. There is water available in all of these neighboring hexes, but it looks like the way he's trying to make up for it is build his first diff plant much sooner. And that hurts as far as graphite is concerned. He's only got 1 press going, and that's going to be a real drain for building anything that wants any sort of graphite, like this laser drill, these extractors. So his first thorium is going to be pretty late. And that's going to delay his first air blast, and it's going to echo down through the ages. Daggers are out and stopped, and he's going to have his first expansion directly to the left there. You can see the big difference that 3 daggers instead of 2 makes for the speed of that happening. Yeah, he really needs more graphite faster. He's 1 press would take 4 mechanical drills worth of coal normally. He's settling for 2 there, just get anything out. He'll be moving into the coal in his neighboring hexes real soon, and pretty desperately. Tree has, let's see, 2 steam gens, 2 glass kilns again. I think that's overkill, but okay. And he is setting up his first 6 smelter for silicon, and that's going to finish it. Looks like 4:30 or so, which that's a better time than last game. And he's doing his early platinum also. This is where the oil is. This is where you make that stuff. What's he doing next? I don't know. Zanzibarzy, 5 minutes, 30 seconds. He's putting up his first platinum. This early, making 3, 4 platinum factories is probably overkill, but that one's debatable. He's doing a lot of manual belts and so forth for his economy stuff. You can see looks like 2 graphite presses that he built in a hurry to cover his shortage. And he's still in a graphite shortage. He needs more of that. And he's probably going for, he's going for it now. He's also leaving stuff unfinished. Like, that unfinished laser drill is slowing the production of his dagger factories that he needs for expansion. But he's getting the plastum in now. Here comes his poly factory. This is not going to be good for the graphite balance unless he gets even more graphite factories out. 645 for polys. Yeah. It's earlier than I tend to do it. All right. Tree has 2 diff generator up, and he is got another 6 silicon, a cheaper low-tech graphite, and he's making his expansion T1 factory. That just started running. Here comes his polys and 6 more silicon drills, and puts them up to 20 or so. No, 21. 21, so that's about 30 silicon per second. That ought to pay for all the building he needs to do, and he also needs it for mono factories and that poly factory. He's going with a small power plant to amp things up, but he's stuck. He built too much too soon. It's probably the overdrive on the dagger factory that pushed him over. So that was a bit of a scramble, that power plant. If he built something larger, it wouldn't have been done in time, and he might have needed the jump start to get back on track. 8 minutes, 2 surge smelters. Again, he's going in for that early dome. Hopefully he picks a dense and productive hex to be his first dome. Down here at Zanzibarzy's base, he's setting up more silicon smelters. He has got about 14. So he's making half as much silicon as Tree is. And he's also got a little bit of a power problem. This is his second, so 4 diff gens total. And he's got to disconnect things to actually keep those running until he can get them all online and some battery built up. So we're stretching the boundary edges of what it's safe to build relative to what power is being produced on both players' parts. Yeah, Tree has also got power trouble. You can see that disconnection in the south there. And it looks like he's mainly targeting his first dome on a 5 diff power plant and his poly factory, along with 2 more diffs from a different source. And he's got a glass problem, more or less. Just to see the schematic around that dome is sort of automation to turn sand and whatever else. Spore, oil, you pretty much automatically put in the silicon that the dome needs to run, and it's making its own phase as well. So you don't get any benefit from the overproduction of any of those pieces going into your pool, but it's also self-contained and you don't have to think about belts or unloaders or anything like that when you actually get it started. His dome is still not operating at 11:30, and in situations like this, you don't even start building it. Work on the other thing that you need. Unfinished buildings are waste. This is probably a graphite shortage, and that's probably what's holding everything up. Yeah, it's missing extractors, laser drills, graphite shortage. But he can go up and actually finish the dome now at 12 minutes. And he's got 5 overdriven dagger factories sending stuff out. So that's taking care of the actual expansion. We'll have a much more even contact between the players in this game. This is more at the midpoint between both of them. And Tree is getting in low-tech fort defenses early. Those will be fine against some Zeniths and against the T1 stuff that's coming out. And he'll be able to plug that entire right side with these, and that'll hold for a while. Zanzibarzy's got arcs and completely ground-based stuff for those defenses. And they're also off-core, so fort schematics are going to be less useful in that case. Yeah, and it looks like he's also got a thorium shortage that's slowing down the building of these drills. Yeah, this is another case of going too far on the initial laser drill, because it builds up a surplus early on and you think you're safe, and then you start using it much more quickly, you run out and it doesn't come back fast enough. Core drawn, glass factory, a little phase factory. Nice number of monos on that initial hex. A little bit more graphite. And that is water combined with some arcs, which will be great against any T1 based ground and not much else. Even like a quasar comes through, it'll pierce through that and cause some trouble. If it hits the power nodes, then the polys are going to have to come and put them back up. If he went that way. That's not the way he's going to go, though. Is that a power shortage again that he's disconnected that section? Yeah, he's low on something still. It might be glass. Here's the part where being short on thorium really hurts you. You want to build T3 factories. That's 750 you need per factory. That'll run you out real quick. So Tree only got one of those down, and Zanzibar's got some time to put up better defenses. Problem is, he doesn't finish the full encirclement of better defenses. And Tree's going to see that weakness, and he's going to use his unit control to punish it. All right, leaving things on attack. They go to the fort. The fort works. Tree's going to see that, yeah, he's got the command center for the attack built, and he's got things stopped. So now he is banking Zeniths for the attack that he wants to make, which is against those only ground-based defenses in the rightmost border hex. He's got some time before enough Zeniths build up to actually use that, so he goes off and does some economy things. These guys are the ones that end the game. What's Z doing now? Yeah, he's focused on domes. He's got dome blindness. He needs to be shoring up those defenses, and he's not. He's putting domes in other places. And the attack came. I missed it. Should have been paying better attention. You saw a little bit of the map there. Tree's Zeniths are headed into that rightmost hex. And it takes a while to pan back there, but we do get to see the... There, it's gone. And that'll make the end of it. Zanzibarzy does some scrappiness here, manually loading cyclones. That'll hold off some stuff, but it runs out real quickly, and these are vulnerable to putting dummy buildings in the neighboring hex and then just wasting the ammo that goes into it. Tree is building into the conquered space. None of these individual crawlers or small things are going to be able to break even that one cyclone. But there's enough defense here now that he's going to have trouble. He'll have to rally up, and he'll need something bigger tech, and he doesn't have it. He's trying to get it, though. This is Dome and 4 multipliers of Zenith factories, but that's not going to come online soon enough. What he needs are something like 4 or 5 cyclones on each of these borders with some menders and walls. And that might even involve taking down some of that early economy stuff. Now, there's sort of a fallacy of why take down anything that works, and so you hesitate to do it. But all of that stuff is like completely early game silicon that is low efficiency, low density, and he needed that space for defense. Like both of those could have been forts. He could have put a fort on his nucleus, and that would have worked out better. But yeah, the nucleus goes, and he knows that it's the end, and he's going to call it. Even though at this point, Tree, paying attention to those attacks more than his economy, overextended a bit, and he's got a power outage. He's still got enough units to pretty much finish things off, and the suicide command has been done. So that's the end. Both rounds go to Tree in nice fast games, early aggression. In this game, there were some other players on the map on the other side. And Tree is going to have to go over and finish them off. So there'll be a little bit more fighting. These guys have mostly been bugging each other the whole time. There's Lazaro and Claudio. Oh, I don't remember, and it's moving too fast to see it easily. They're headed for power plants, so those diff gens. These scatters are decent against 3 zeniths or a stream of little guys, especially if you put glass in them. Glass is great ammo for scatters if this is what you're facing. It'd be really good for him if he could get enough power generated to turn on those unit factories. But no, he's got to stop and put up defenses. So these 3 cyclones with platinum, and he's got the bait generator on there. That's going to protect him from zeniths for a good amount of time. But then he's going to have to worry about the daggers and the crawlers that are going to be heading this way pretty soon. And Tree has cores taken that close, so if he chooses to come over and build into that, then he's going to get the surround and have a really strong position for ending the game. Extractor to silicon schematic. There's no menders on that fort yet, so eventually Zenith would make some progress. Some of the splash damage is going to get through those walls and actually hit the core. And knocking off the core flips the whole thing. Skip forward a couple minutes. Tree has now come over this way and is building forts into this space. So right on the border there, much more defense on Tree's side than he's got production to put units in. And he's going to spam a lot of copper walls. He's probably got a huge amount of copper and lead banked up from monos and not a whole lot of building. So those polys will keep these copper walls up for a long time. You don't need mending, you don't need anything else. There's not really anything killing the zeniths on the other side, so they'll just continue to build up in that spot, but this is pretty safe. Tree is going to respond to this by setting up a poly trap. So enough parallaxes in range to pull those polys towards his fort, and then they'll just get shredded. And that'll really cut down on the speed that these things rebuild and that Lazaro can do any other building elsewhere. And all the while this is going on, the zeniths are accumulating more and more. Looks like he also dropped some unit factories to do attack on expansion. all the way here. Some of those zeniths are being drawn in by chasing the polys, and if they actually get within range of the cyclone, they'll lose a couple at a time. We can even put unit healers there and go even longer, but it's not necessary really at this point. It's just a matter of breaking through, and the method that Tree's gone with for breaking through here is the actual ground units are going to do the work. There's some fortresses going by and all those daggers and crawler factories that have been in operation the whole time. They're going to go around it. So this is gonna, oh, and some manual control will also take care of that. So one command center just placed above, that'll send the zeniths completely behind. Although a core loss at that point cut down their numbers. You don't want to drag your polycloud over an opposing fort like that, but there's enough of them that it's not really going to make a difference. There's basically no poly rebuilding happening for Lazaro at this point. He's actually building more poly factories in the lower left. That's going to be too little too late. Yeah, and now he's got a fort on the above, and he just needs to do a rally further to the left, and they'll head for some power plants instead of to the fort, and that'll round things out. And here comes the tactical control of units. And straight to those thorium generators. So if Lazaro had added some defenses above him, he could have lasted longer instead of leaving those spots completely open. Megas might have helped also, since they like to go and fly to cores under attack, and they can do some defense with absolutely no attention at all. But yeah, this is now decided. Tree is building into his conquests. Here's a cool stream of crawlers to follow. Finish off the last guy. And we're done. Game goes to Tree.